As you've read from the video title, I will be ranking all of the towers in Touhou Tower Defense Monster Tower Defense. So first I will go over my criteria and how I'm going to be ranking them. There will be footage in the right hand corner, but I will not be ranking the towers based off of that footage, but I will take it into consideration when ranking the tower. In D tier, I have the rarely good towers. The towers that have situations of where they are good in, but sometimes, most of the time, they're outclassed by other towers. C tier, sometimes good, sometimes they're the best, most of the time they're bad. Like specialist towers are mostly going to go here. B tier, sometimes bad. These are just average towers. Most of the time they're good, most of the time they're bad. They're all-rounded. A tier, rarely bad. I'm sure you get the gist when it comes to it. S, always good. It has no bad situation. Always a good pick when making your loadouts. Alright, I'm going to be starting with D tier and making my way up to S tier. D tier, Seiga, all the way at the bottom. Its role is as a physical summoner tower that can make units that can make more units, essentially. It is a snowball tower. But on lunatic difficulty, which is how I'm going to be ranking these towers, it is really hard to get the ball rolling, and when the ball gets rolling, it typically dies very fast, and there are just better options. How the tower works is it summons zombies that can inflict the status effect Infected, which makes them, the enemies on death, turn into zombies, which at higher levels can snowball out of control into more and more and more zombies. But on lunatic difficulty, it is very hard to get the ball rolling, as you need a lot of weak enemies in order to get it to be effective. Alright, I'm actually going to be jumping up to C tier. I am not saying that name. I do not care. I am not saying that name. It is a specialist in anti-air, but also, as an upside, it can summon in units that follow along the track to fight enemies. It typically only summons down the shortest path, so personally I just use it for anti-air. It is a summoner. The things it summons deals physical damage, have a decent amount of HP, and deal a decent amount of damage. Its main attack deals spell type, they deal magic type damage. And it can actually save them up when not attacking, up to 5, but it can hold as many as high as its level is. Next up, I am not saying this name either. So what it does is it has a lot of splash. It can affect a large area, especially at higher levels, and every enemy in that area gets both stunned, the higher the level, the higher the stun, and also take quite a good amount of damage. Not like very good damage, but it deals enough damage for its price, and its range and its area. It deals physical type damage despite using the literal power of the sun. Sometimes it doesn't make sense what type of damage it does for some reason. Cirno. It is a single target damage dealing slowdown type tower. It is a spell type tower, and it deals single target damage, and it deals magic type damage. And that's a pretty good combo. Single target damage while also being magic. That is pretty good. At max level, it has a slowdown aura that makes it so that every single enemy within its range is 30% slower. Which is really, really, really good. But, it just depends on whether it's in a good bend or around a good corner for it to be, for the slowdown effect to be good. And its damage just isn't that good for me to rank it any higher than B. Up next, Tenshi. Its role is as a high range, low damage, but good splash tower. It is a blast tower that deals physical damage, and it deals a lot of, and it has a lot of range, like a lot of range, which is pretty good, if you ask me. At higher levels, it can stun, which can be good, but I wouldn't personally just use it for the stun, because there are better towers for slowing down or outright stopping the enemies. So next up, this has the potential of having one of the highest single target damage any tower can do. So how it works is it has a set random chance to do a crit, and those crits deal 4 times damage. So it will randomly deal 4 times damage. And at a higher level, I think it's 10 times damage, which absolutely obliterates enemies. However, it does physical damage, and it has an incredibly slow attack speed, making it useless against crowds. So this is a single target damage dealing tower, essentially, that deals physical damage, and is only good at higher levels. So, yeah. Although it has the potential to be really good. Next up, we are obviously moving on to B tier, which is Marisa. I'm firing my leg. Okay, so back on track. It is a magic type damage dealing AoE tower. So you use it against crowds. You put it down a straight line of the track, it's going to do lots of damage. So if you put it down a straight line, it is going to absolutely shred everything, except for tanks and things with a lot of magic resistance, because, reminder, it deals magic type damage. Yeah. It doesn't really have any special abilities, besides the fact that it fires down a straight line. So, yeah. Next up, Nitori. This is really a sometimes bad tower. I mean, it would, if it's the criteria for like an A tier or S tier. I mean, what it does is at lower levels, it deals quite a good chunk of damage for how much it costs, but at higher levels, it can push back enemies using its water gun and dealing a lot of damage, a lot of physical damage. So, it's pretty simple. If you put it down a straight line, looking against the enemies, it can stall for a long period of time, but you'll need other Nitoris in order to completely stop enemies from moving. Yeah, I don't have really much to say about it. I haven't used it that much. Right. So I haven't used this tower all that much, so that might affect my ranking. So you might rank this higher, you might rank it lower. It does feel like it should fit S or A tier, but its attack speed is just way too slow, and it is way too inconsistent for me to actively use it. So its overall role doesn't really have one. At lower levels, it deals pretty okay single target damage. At mid-leveled, it deals pretty mediocre against crowds. I wouldn't use it against crowds, but nor would I use it against single targets. And then at its maximum level, that is a really inconsistent ability that deals really good damage against crowds, but it is really inconsistent. So it's overall a really inconsistent tower because of just how slow everything is and how long its cooldowns are. So sometimes bad tier. Still pretty good. Next up, Reisen. It is a cheap damage dealing tower. It has a pretty okay attack speed, and it has a lot of range. You'll typically see people putting them on power springs because their range allows them to pretty much always utilize that buff, unlike other towers, which actively need an enemy in range in order to activate that buff, or in order to use that buff that the power spring gives. It struggles in two situations, though. It struggles quite hard against crowds. It's pretty mediocre late game, and yeah. But it's really cheap for how much value you're getting out of it. Next up, one of my personal favorite towers, but I just honestly can't rank it any higher due to its glaring flaws. It sucks when it is faced against a single target, like a really beefy single target. And if there are multiple stretches of the track, it tends to do quite poorly because you either need to micro it, so it's always attacking all of the paths to weaken as many enemies as possible, or you need to get a whole bunch of them, and that leads into another problem. It's pretty useless at lower levels. Don't use it at lower levels. You need it to be at least level 4 or 5 in order for it to get things done with its poison damage. Okay, I should actually explain its overall role. Its ability to inflict a poison effect damage, which, although it deals really crap damage, it has a very, very long effect time, allowing it so then if you let the poison sit and wait, then it can actually rank up quite a high amount of damage. But the poison has a weakness of where it can't actually finish off enemies on its own. You'll need another tower to deal damage, in order to finish off the enemy. Or you could just use yourself. Either way works, as long as you're finishing off the enemy on your own. And also it has a net ability, but its net ability sucks. Don't ever keep it in mind when using the tower. It is a really bad ability. But it's an okay addition. Alright, next. I might get some hate for this because I haven't used this tower enough. But it's going in rarely bad tier. Although it can't attack air, it has a lot of situations of where you'd want to use it as like a support or a damage dealer. I probably should have explained if towers are good against air or not. Oh, it's too late. I'm tired. I've spent all night working on this. I want to finish this video. I don't care. So, what it does is it follows the track, and it will, attack enemies within its tower's range. Like a, moving Tenshi, basically. But one thing it has that Tenshi does have, and Komanachi does not, is Tenshi can actually be buffed by power springs, while Komanachi cannot, which is a pretty heavy downside on some maps, on some places, with some strategies, which is pretty rare, but it's still something to keep in mind. Alright, I think I've dwelled... Actually, no, I haven't dwelled on it for too long. It has another ability of where it can weaken the defense of enemies, allowing other towers to deal more damage, essentially removing one of their major weaknesses. Well, not removing, but it weakens their weakness really a lot, which helps in the long run. Next up. See, there's a thing that surprisingly not a lot of people know about Alice, is it can heal literally any type of unit that can take damage. So the mud things, the mud dummies that you throw onto the track, that you buy for overpriced 200 gold, or 200 blue points, they're called, which is overpriced. They can actually heal those when they take damage if they're inside Alice's range. Which can help sometimes, but it's not like a strategy that I actively use a lot. If you have Alice, it can be an alright strategy to try to heal up the dummy. It should be playing in the footage somewhere at some point, I don't know. But at some point in the footage, the Alice does heal it. Alright, I should probably go into its role. So what it does is it summons two type of dummies. Dolls, or dummies, I don't know. Dolls. And one of the dolls is a melee damage dealer that can block for quite a good amount of time. And it can have up to 3 of them at a single time. So you'll want to use them in order to stall and block enemies, so then your other towers can deal damage to the enemy that's being stalled. The other type of doll is a range damage dealer. It can actually deal with flying units, which it deals pretty crap damage to flying units, but its use is there. It's there. If you can spam enough of them, it's there. But of course, you really just want to use it so then it can block enemies for your other towers to deal damage. Alright, next in A tier is the... I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for this, See, I should probably put it in S, but it just has quite a few weaknesses that I just honestly can't. On maps with not a lot of space, it can't make its full amount of money. On shorter levels, it's absolutely useless. It deals low damage, and its stun is okay, but don't use it for the stun. Its placement price is overpriced. It is just not that good. Alright. So how it works is it places down plants that, after a while, will give you money. And you can, like, use the Yuka in order to spread the plants around if you want to like, deal chip damage in different areas, although that's not a very useful strategy. And on smaller maps, you might have to do it in order to, micro the plant, so then the Yuka has its maximum plants always up, even though you don't have enough space in order to just leave it there and let it make money, or let it make the blue points. Alright, so next up is which one of these queens is going to be the best or the worst? Which one starts in SD or which one? Alright, so it is good against single targets, except if they have physical resistance, but, yeah. They're good against single targets. They're pretty awful at lower levels against single targets, or against multi-targets. But, at level 5, they have the Funny Thomas the Trank engine, to deal with crowds. And also you'll have other towers which are probably really, really good at dealing with crowds, so I wouldn't really worry about that. And it can also stall really well. It's a really good staller and a really good damage dealer. It's just all around a really, really strong tower. Next up. Wait. Oh, I just spoiled it. Okay, you know what? Yeah, you all know what. Yeah, you guys were gonna know anyway. It doesn't matter. So, this tower, I originally underestimated it. But when I started to play with it, my god, it is strong, man. It deals really good single target damage. Its ability of where it scares all enemies in its range actually deals damage and can affect flying units, which is pretty gosh darn good. And it's not even that expensive to set up, and its fear ability, although it kind of is really bad when paired with summoner units, if you just spam a whole bunch of them and use the ability, they can perma-stun entire armies of enemies. And if, like, there's some giant enemy which is immune to its fear effect, that doesn't even matter because it deals good single target damage. So unless there's like a whole crowd of them, it's still going to do really good against that. Its only real weakness is against flying enemies, but it can accidentally hit flying enemies with its ability anyway to fear all enemies in its range. So it's just all around a really good tower. But, of course, there is one that is always going to be the king. Ren. It fits all of the criteria. It has everything, man. Its main ability, which is its chain lightning, can hit multiple targets, which makes it pretty good against single target against multi targets, and it deals a pretty good amount of damage too. And it has quite a fast attack rate as well. Its next ability, which is Summon Child, which makes it commit child labor to attack enemies for it, and stall enemies as the poor child has to endure pain from the enemies. Okay, I'm gonna stop. So, it can summon a summon unit called Chen, which is affected by the summoner tree upgrade path, which I wouldn't personally really care about it. But it's good to know. Also, I forgot to mention the lightning deals, obviously, magic damage, and Chen deals physical damage. So it has 2 damage types. And I think it gets this at level 3, which is pretty cheap for how well-rounded it already is. So Chen can stall enemies because it, like, fights on the track. And it deals pretty decent single target damage as well, which is pretty good. And I just think it's a really good tower. Also Chen has 2 other abilities. One, which is actually no, it doesn't have 2 abilities. What am I saying? It has an ability of where it can do like a ground stomp, which stuns all enemies in its range for a short time. And at level 5, it pulls them in. I don't know when that would be useful, but it stuns them for longer as well, so I don't care. So that is going to be the official final ranking for all the towers in Touhou Tower Defense Monster Tower Defense game at the time of now. You probably won't agree with any of these, maybe, but this is just how I'd rank them. Alright, I'm not gonna tell you to like and subscribe because you're not gonna do that unless I'm challenging you. So, see y'all in the next video. Also, this is my first time ever trying to animate, or not animate, edit a video. So if you like the improved quality, make sure to, no, I just told you not to like and subscribe. God damn.